In this demonstration, we're going to talk about creating a color wheel with Prismacolor colored pencils, and we're going to talk about this first kit of pencils that you and a partner will share. At each group of tables, there should be one of these sharpeners. Either one will work. This particular one has two openings. You can kind of see a little graphic right there, kind of shows you the difference between how they sharpen. However, I will give you a pointer. I know everybody knows how to use a pencil sharpener, but it's helpful to understand this. So if you place it in the sharpener and you hold your finger next to it, it kind of secures it and holds it in place. And then you can just turn it and sharpen it. Otherwise, if you go without holding it in place, it kind of wobbles around. It can easily break the lead. Something else to know and really understand that not the lead, but the color on the inside is fragile, like it's really soft. So if you drop these pencils, they tend to break. So that's why when you sharpen a pencil and then the color breaks off in the sharpener, it's because everything inside here has been broken. So please treat your pencils kindly. Within each of these kits that each two of you will share are an orange, yellow, a red, blue, green, and purple, or also known as violet. And then there are two colorless blenders. So each person in the class should have a colorless blender to use. So we're going to start off making our color wheel, starting with our primary colors. Okay. Refocus here. Okay, so we'll start with our red, which in this case we're using the crimson red. And the way that you apply the pencil is just with a really nice, soft, circular motion, kind of using the side of the lead if possible. If you get too like pointy, which this one's really not doing, like something like that, then try to turn the lead a little bit more to the side. Sorry, I keep calling it lead. It's not lead. It's colored pencil. Okay, so we're going to color in the entire circle, and then on one side, we're going to use a little bit more pressure. So right now you should be using a very light pressure. Colored pencils like these are made of wax, and what happens if you press too hard, it creates a waxy surface, and on top of that surface, you can't add any other color. So that's why we don't add too much pressure at first. We're just building layers. Okay, so now just so you can see the difference, you can draw a line down the center, and then one half you're going to use a lot more pressure. Okay, that way you can kind of see what it looks like once you've built up a lot of color. Okay, and then we're going to label it. So you're going to do this as well. Crimson red. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do that with the Copenhagen blue down here and the canary yellow over here. Okay, so notice that we have our three primary colors that are each one is touching this solid outlined triangle. Now we're going to add our secondary colors, which we'll place in the very center between each of our primary colors, because remember, in order to get a secondary color, you have to mix two primary colors. Instead of layering those today on our color wheel, for time's sake, we're just going to use colors that come from Prismacolor. So we're going to have an orange here because red and yellow make orange. And then we're having a green down here, which is called apple green because yellow and blue make green. And then over here, we're going to have our violet. Now, it's pretty common within the US to hear purple versus violet, but truly it is violet. If you want to get down to the specifics, purple is actually more of a red violet. So that's why it's called violet. So I'm going to go ahead and label all of those and then do the exact same thing I just did here and color in each of those circles. Okay, so now we have our primary and our secondary colors on our color wheel. And then now we need to make the intermediate, or it's also known as the tertiary colors in between. And in order to get an intermediate color, you mix a primary and a secondary together. So this next color here is going to be a red-orange, and then here will be a yellow-orange. It's pretty common to hear the primary color in the first order when naming that color. I mean, I guess it could be an orange-yellow if there was more orange than yellow, but these will all have equal parts. So first I'm going to go ahead and label all of them, and then I will go ahead and start mixing all of those colors together. Please notice that as I apply the colored pencil to the paper, I am continuing with that circular motion. So I expect you guys to do the same thing. Okay, so when you're layering these colors, you have to go back and forth. We'll start with the red-orange. It's not a dramatic difference. This one, you're not going to create the half amount of pressure unless you want to use, maybe we can do that with the colorless blender so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so I've laid down a really light amount of orange. Go back over it with the red. Okay, so then we can use the colorless blender. Just draw a line down the center. And then same thing. So this is a different texture than what you're used to with the colored pencils. It's a little stiffer, but you just apply pressure. You don't have to apply too much pressure. Again, circular motion, and then you can kind of see the difference of what it looks like when it's been burnished. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the yellow-orange and do the exact same thing all the way with all these other colors. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to show you a couple more things. Let's see if I can refocus this. On the very tip of, well, you can kind of tell at least, the very tip of this colorless blender, it does tend to pick up some of the color that you are blending. So you do have to be careful going, in this case, not so much, but when you're working on a final project, you know, you want to be careful when going from one color to another because you can kind of drag it there. There's a little bit of green that went forward with that. The violet is fairly light. In this particular case, it doesn't matter which color we start by layering, but I do think it's important that you turn your paper from time to time because that tooth can get filled in a little bit easier. And then again, remember super light pressure because as soon as you put that hard pressure on, it creates that waxy surface and you really can't add anything else to it. And you have to go back and forth to build up those layers. Okay, so here we have our color wheel. Some of you who've used colored pencils before probably have been used to blending or doing that final layer with white, which you can definitely do. However, it certainly adds white to your overall color. That's why it's nice to use the colorless blenders. So at least for now, at this point, that's what you're going to use. And then just as far as when you label these, you don't need to label them like Copenhagen blue, apple green. The intermediate colors you can just label as what they're normally called on the color wheel. So blue green, blue violet, and so on. Okay, that's it.